Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue. Mon nom c'est Hélène Bernard, je suis ingénieure, conseillère en agro-environnement au ministère de l'Agriculture en Mauricie. Je vais animer la matinée avec vous ce matin. Grâce à l'émergence des technologies d'agriculture de précision, les exploitations agricoles sont désormais des lieux idéaux pour la conduite de recherches agricoles dont les résultats sont directement applicables à l'entreprise. Ces méthodes d'essais à la ferme reposent sur des applicateurs de précision et des capteurs de rendement. Ces technologies permettent de créer un dispositif de recherche sur les fermes avec plusieurs traitements, et ce, sans contrainte, ce qui n'était pas possible il y a à peine quelques années. Les applications de recherche à la ferme sont multiples. Par exemple, des essais de dosage d'azote, d'engrais organiques, en passant par les taux de semis, et même pour l'application de produits phytosanitaires. Cet ensemble de technologies est assez accessible et en déploiement rapide actuellement, donc au cœur de l'innovation en grande culture. Au cours de cette journée, nous verrons ensemble plusieurs exemples de ces différentes applications avec des producteurs et des chercheurs. On commence avec M. Bullock, David Bullock, qui est professeur au département d'économie agricole et de consommation, de l'Université de l'Illinois. Il étudie l'économie de la technologie et de l'information agricole et publie des recherches sur la technologie de l'agriculture de précision depuis 1998. Il est le chercheur principal du projet Data Intensive Farm Management, parrainé par l'USDA, qui utilise la technologie de l'agriculture de précision pour mener des expériences agronomiques à grande échelle sur les fermes qui génèrent des données pour aider les agriculteurs à gérer les engrais azotés et d'autres intrants. À vous.
Thank you. So I want to make a few points. Okay. The first point I'm going to want to make is that something called on-farm precision experimentation is, I think it's fair to say that it is beginning to revolutionize agronomic sciences. I know that sounds like I have a big head, and I probably do have a big head, but I'm not the only person who's beginning to feel this way. The second point is that farmers, real-world farmers, and crop advisors, the people who help them make management plans, they can actually do this. They can work with the data-intensive farm management project, and there's some pretty user-friendly ways for real people to do this kind of science on their own farms. Because they can do the work on their own farms, that means they're getting data from their own soils, they're getting data from the same fields that they're trying to make money and manage. And that's very different from how agronomic science has been done, historically. Okay. The Data Intensive Farm Management Project has been working for about 10 years, and we have developed what we call the cyber infrastructure, which is basically this software thing that you can get at online, and it's free, and it's user-friendly, and real people can use it to do all design experiments and do all sorts of things with on-farm precision experimentation, and I'll show you some details soon. Okay. And the thing is that the data, once produced, a lot of farmers are a little skittish about having their data, being sold to Monsanto or something. This data is the farmer's data. The Data Intensive Farm Manager Project reserves the right to use the data for research, for academic purposes, but the data, we don't give the data away, we don't sell the data. The data is kept safe from the Russians in the Oracle Cloud.
Safe from those?
Yes, even more so, thank you. Now that I'm in Canada, I'm free to say that. Okay. If you take an economics course when you're 18 years old in college, something you're going to see very early is you're going to see this diagram in the first couple of weeks. And this is usually called a production function in regular economics. And what it does is it shows how, if you change some sort of input, what's the relationship to the input and the output. Okay? That's very important for agricultural management and for agronomy. You'll also learn just a little bit of economic theory, microeconomic theory. I could spend 45 minutes giving the whole lecture, or you could just trust me. Or you could do a calculus problem that takes about 4 seconds. And the thing is that if you know this production function, and you know the price of the input and the price of the output, then the profit maximizing choice is to find the place on the production function that has the slope which is equal to the input price divided by the output price. The point here is not so much the technical part, but to understand if you want to manage things well, you got to know prices. That's pretty easy. But you also need to know the relationship between inputs and outputs. All right. Here's what they don't tell you. At least nobody told me when I was 18 years old. Nobody knows what this looks like. Okay, so you have this conceptual function, but especially in agriculture, you're not dealing with a manufacturing system where you pretty much know that if you put this much labor in and this much metal in and this much electricity in, you're going to get this many automobiles out. Agriculture is much, much more complicated than that because of different soils, because of different weather. And so it's very hard to know what this curve looks like and how it looks different in different places. Okay, for example, and this is a real challenge, the main challenge to precision agriculture. And the reason it hasn't just taken off like they said it would in the 1990s is because nobody knows what this looks like. Nobody knows what in the field, how the response of yield to an input is different in different places. And nobody knows in different soil conditions, different weather conditions, people just don't know what this looks like, okay? And because people don't know what this looks like, really, I would say to a large degree, if you're old enough to be around in the late 1990s, people were just going crazy about this literal space age agriculture. It is space age agriculture, right? But my brother, who was a crop scientist, said, this is great engineering, but they don't know what they're doing. And he was right. So over the past 30 years, there's been actually much less use and profit from site-specific management from precision agriculture than everybody thought was going to happen 30 years ago. Okay. Here's another interesting point. This function is where statistics comes from. Okay. There was this genius named R.A. Fisher in England about 100 years ago. And he was working at a place called the Rothamsted Research Station. And at Rothamsted, since 1843, they've been doing something called small plot agronomic trials. And we'll talk about those later. But his job was to kind of figure out how to use these trials to figure out how yield responds to seed rates and nitrogen and other things. And he was a genius. He was also kind of a Nazi, but he was a genius. And he did all this stuff that started modern statistics. So this question is so basic to science, and people have been trying to figure this out forever. Okay? All right. Fisher worked with small plot data, small plot trials. What is a small plot trial, and how do they work, and why do they do them? All right, this is a aerial photo of a small plot trial. And in that trial, there are 24 small plots. Each one is about 4 meters by 10 meters. So this whole thing is maybe the size of 2 basketball courts. Okay, and they have 7 nitrogen rates in this trial, and in different plots they put different nitrogen application rates on, and then they just see what happens to yield. Okay, so for example, here is a place where they put no nitrogen fertilizer on, and they got some yield, which you can see at this point. No nitrogen fertilizer and a little bit of yield. And the reason it can yield is because there's actual nitrogen in the soil. So you don't necessarily have to put fertilizer on to get at least some output. Here's one where they put 24 gallons on, and they got a higher yield. Well, they get 24 data points, and then you can try to figure out using statistics what this curve looks like. So this is what Fisher was trying to do. He was trying to figure out how to fit curves to scatter plots of points. Okay. This has been going on for hundreds of years. Here's a study. The research was done in 1767. This was by a gentleman farmer in England. And he ended up publishing it in 1784. So for hundreds of years, people have known, oh, this is a really important question. This was a barley trial, and his question, how does my barley output change if I put on different amounts of manure? Okay. Agronomists have gotten, for a very long time, most of their data from these small plot trials. Okay, many of you probably have worked on these small plot trials. And that's great. These small plot trials aren't going to go away, and they're still going to be useful, and people will still conduct them. I'm not saying that it's the end of this sort of research. But here's the thing about working small plot trials. Here's how you do them. This is how you conduct them. First of all, you get yourself some orange flags and some measuring tape. And then you get yourself a bunch of research assistants or technicians who make way too much money. And you maybe get yourself some little machines, and you go out in the field in October in the rain, and you yell at each other from 100 meters away, left, left, left. And you put in these trials, okay? The thing is, okay, these are labor intensive. And because they're labor intensive, they're expensive. And that's why they're small, because they're expensive, okay? The problem is, because they're small, it's the size of this room. If you want to experiment here, what does that mean for something on the other side of the field? What does that mean for something on the other side of the province or something on the other side of the ocean? It's not at all clear, okay? And so what's called inference space, what statisticians call inference space, the inference space of these trials is pretty small. It's hard to move them to get knowledge about what happens in other fields. And of course, the farmers care about their own fields. Okay. All right, here's another idea. It's called a strip trial. Strip trials can be done on big fields. This field, I'm saying it's a kilometer long, okay? And you can make different rates and go all the way down the field in a big long strip. And some places you have 27 gallons per acre. Some places you put on 55 gallons per acre, okay? This is great. These are done all the time. in scientific research, both in public research and in research by private companies. Okay, and it's good to do these, and it has a bigger inference space, at least it's the whole field. The problem is, and I don't want to go into too many details, the problem is it's pretty easy to get spatial correlation between, say, soil properties or topographical properties and the design of the experiment, which means you can't sort out, oh, why is yield going up? Is yield going up because I put more nitrogen on this part of the field? Or is yield going up because this is just a very productive part of the field? And so it gets difficult to untangle what's causing what. And that's a problem with small plot trials, with strip trials. Okay, and it's why small plot trials aren't done in strips. They're done in checkerboards, because that creates more spatial variation in the input rates. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit here. I want to talk about precision agriculture. I'm not sure your background in precision agriculture. I know we're talking about precision agriculture today, but I'm not sure how many of you are farmers. So if I tell you some things you already know, please forgive. All right. So in the 90s, like I said, there were lots of pictures like this. There wasn't quite an internet yet, but if you read the farm media or watched television and watched farm shows or whatever, you saw a lot of pictures like this. You got machines and they're hooked up to satellites and they are farming by the meter. We're gonna farm by the meter. Now, first of all, this is dumb because a nitrogen applicator is 18 meters wide. And so you're not gonna farm by the meter. At best, you're gonna farm by 18 meters. But in general, this was never gonna happen because you can't tell on these sorts of small areas enough about how yields change with the input rate to really say a whole lot. And so these were beautiful little pictures, but they were never very realistic. Okay. These days, of course, everybody has been talking for the past 7 or 8 years about agricultural big data, agricultural big data, agricultural big data. That's the buzzword. I don't know what the one for next decade will be, but this decade in my world, the buzzword is big data. And a few years back, they would say, well, we're just going to get lots and lots of data, and then we're going to put them in computers, and we're going to do lots of great things, without really much talk about how. You know, how about some details? You got a bunch of data. It's 1970s pioneer hybrid strip trial data. What's that going to do for me? It doesn't matter how much data like that you got. It's not pertinent to today. Okay, so a lot of garbage is a lot of garbage. It's not okay just to have lots and lots of data and try to figure out what it means. And these days, there's a lot of ways to get new data. You can fly drones around and you can take, imagery. You can take pictures of your field. Or you can take satellites and you can get satellite imagery of fields. And these are available all over the world all the time. You can go there. A lot of it is free. You can get it via the internet, and you can see all sorts of data about pictures. A lot of times it's infrared data telling you what color the crop leaves are in infrared colors. Okay. All right, fine. That's one kind of data. All right. The problem with just having that kind of data, the problem with just having lots and lots of drone data or lots and lots of satellite data is that your data looks like this. So if you take lots and lots of satellite data from a farmer's fields or from the farmer's fields in some area, all those farmers are going to be doing more or less the same thing. They're going to be putting more or less the same amount of nitrogen on the ground. And so there's not going to be that much variance in nitrogen rates. So maybe these black circles come from a place where there's sandy soil, and these white circles come from a place where there's silty soil. You would like to know what those curves look like, what those two different curves look like, but you can't fit a curve through a column of data. You can't fit a curve through a column of data. What this means is you can take as many satellite pictures as you want. You can take as many drone pictures as you want. But if you don't vary the management variable, the data are not going to tell you what happens when you vary the management variable. And farmers, what they want to know is, how should I vary my management variable? So if you don't get data that comes from changing management, you're not going to know how to manage from that data. Okay? And this is, I think it's really basic, but it's lost. It's just lost in all the conversation and all the hullabaloo. You can translate that word. Okay. All right. Here's another idea. This other idea is called on-farm precision experimentation in English. And what on-farm precision experimentation does is it uses the technology, precision technology, to get the data you need to make the precision technology useful. Okay? To get data to make precision technology useful, you have to learn about how yield basically responds differently to input management in different parts of the field. If you don't have that data, you can't say much about, you don't get much guidance to management. And so that means that the technology really isn't worth very much. But the thing is that the technology can be used to get the data you need to make the technology useful. So, on-farm precision experiments, they're big, they're cheap, relatively, okay? And they're done on farmers' own fields by farmers themselves, which means that the inference space is the one you want. You're going to use this data to manage the place you want to manage, and the data comes from that place. Okay. This is you can get at this, okay. We have the cyber infrastructure. It's at DIFM.farm. You can go there. It's free. You can play around, okay. Let me just stay up front. I'm too old to start a startup company. I do not want to swim with those sharks, okay. We are creating a public good that can be used worldwide to encourage on-farm precision experimentation. There's really not much of a catch. Okay, so here is an example of the data that you can get from an on-farm precision experiment. This is a 71-acre, a 30-hectare farm in the state of Ohio. And what we've done here is, you see on the left, there's a grayscale grid on that field, okay? And there's a bunch of what we call plots. Each of those plots is about 60 feet, 18 meters wide, maybe 70, 80 meters long, okay? And on each one of those, a different nitrogen rate is assigned, okay? Here there were 5 nitrogen rates in all. They went from 15 gallons to 86 gallons per acre. This is called UAN 28. 1 gallon equals approximately 3 pounds of nitrogen. Okay. Now, if you look at the middle map, the red one, that's data. That's called as applied data. It shows how much nitrogen actually went down on the ground. So the machines aren't perfect. They bounce around, and so if it's trying to put on 28 gallons, it doesn't put on exactly 28 gallons, but it comes pretty close. And so you can make a big trial on a big field like this. What you see on the right-hand side is the yield data, Okay, it's pretty clear that where you have light colored red, in other words, not very much nitrogen went down, you also get a light colored brown. In other words, not much yield came out. There's a clear response of yield to nitrogen on this field. Okay. What you see over here in panel D, every one of these things is a data point. And it's in a table, and it will say, here's the longitude, here's the latitude of that point, and this is the estimate of how much yield was gathered in a rectangle, around that point. So these are coming about every 2 meters, and here it doesn't show it, but what we've got here, this is a harvester, and it is picking up the corn, and it is giving us data. Okay. All right. How's this work? Well, and this also shows, there you see the blue machine is an applicator, and it is putting down nitrogen, and then here in this case the harvester is half as wide, and it's harvesting in the fall. All right, how's this happen? Well, you get something called a shapefile. It's just a file with a lot of longitude and latitude points, basically a bunch of polygons in space, and you can assign numbers to those polygons. And then the computer can read those numbers, the computer on the nitrogen applicator. It's hooked up to GPS, so it knows longitude and latitude. And you use what's called a variable rate applicator, so that when the farmer drives over a certain part of the field, the applicator is hooked up to a satellite, and it puts down the amount of nitrogen, or whatever the input is, that is called for by the trial design. Here is one of our farmers. His name is Alan Ceci. He lives in Illinois, not far from me. And he is heading out to put down a seed rate trial for corn. So he's going to make the seed rates change as he drives. And what he did was he took this video with his iPhone. Okay, so of course his steering is locked in with the satellite. So his machine's going to go straight, and so for several minutes he doesn't really need to steer, and he can take out his iPhone and he can take a video of this monitor, this screen monitor on his machine. Okay. And what you're going to see here is in yellow, it says 30 right now, which means the trial design is saying at this point, this longitude and latitude, you need to put down 30 seeds per acre. Okay. The red is how much is really going down. So 29.65 thousand seeds per acre are a very good estimate of how much the machine is putting on the ground. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. Now I'm going to turn this on, and it's going to bounce up and down. But what you'll see is after a few seconds, what's in yellow will go to 42. In other words, the farmer has come to a new part of the field where he wants to put down, the trial says put down 42,000. And soon after that, you'll see in the red that also goes up towards 42. So it's bouncing around, it's 30, it's 30, it's 30, boom, it goes to 42, and soon after that in the red, that goes up to 38, 40, etc. The point is, this is easy. These farmers, they have this equipment. Most of them in Illinois, the commercial farmers, they've got the equipment, they know how it works, and they just drive, which is way easier than orange flags and tape measures. Okay. Of course, you take harvest. Harvests have yield monitors. Okay. This is one of our Illinois farmers. He's going to say in English, he's put this video up on YouTube, and it shows an icon of his harvester coming up through a soybean field that is planted at different rates. So
this is a short video of my brother harvesting the soybean population study on Wenty Farms Ltd. You can see the combine moving across the field with the population maps in the background. Isn't technology great?
So I'm very proud of that, of course. This is the DIFM research team. It's a bunch of professors and grad students in many, many US states and increasingly also in Canadian provinces. We've been doing quite a bit in Quebec and also in the Prairie provinces and in Ontario, and had excellent experience with this. So it's a big group of people. We're also doing a lot of work in South Africa. I'm going to South America in a couple weeks. I've just been promoting this all over the place, and it's being well received. Okay, here's the problem. This year, the DIFM project is going to do about 150 of these trials, which, if you think of past research, is way, way more than other research projects have ever been able to do. But we don't want to do 150 trials. We want to help a world come around where not us, but the world does tens of thousands of trials every year. We envision this a little bit how farmers take soil samples. They can hire a company, and every maybe 4 years, they'll take soil samples on some of their fields and then use those soil samples and talk to their crop consultants and try to figure out what those soil samples mean for management. We foresee a world in which farmers are working with crop consultants, running these trials, not in every field and every year, but running them strategically to continually learn about how yields respond to inputs in different parts of their fields. Okay? Every farmer cannot have his own professor, of course. And so we've tried to create a cyber infrastructure that makes it possible for farmers and crop consultants to do this more on their own. Okay. So I want to show you real quick, and I don't have that much time. I want to show you real quick some of this cyber infrastructure so you'll can see a little bit of how it works. So
a lot of times it's very difficult to do some of this field research, but we have a new tool that's available, and it's part of the Data Intensive Farm Management Program. This is a program to help farmers be able to do on-farm research trials well and be able to evaluate their data. And we're going to go through a quick example of what this website can do. Once we've opened our web browser, we can go to DIFM.farm. We can then log in, create an online account, and go to Farmers and Advisors. Under Farmers and Advisors, we can start by going to Farms. Here we can add our farm to the list by scrolling down and clicking Add Farm. And within each of these farms, we can manage different fields. We can put as many fields as we'd like to in here. In this example, we have 3 fields that we've input into this farm. And within each of these fields, we can go to them and we can input multiple trials. In 1 year, we can do a soybean seeding rate. In another year, we can do a nitrogen rate for our corn. And within each of these trials, we can look at different things we want to look at and test. We can add our A/B lines. Under trial configuration, we can add or edit. We can put in our harvester width. We can put in the distances from the headlands and the sidelands we want to start the research project. And we can add our minimum and maximum plot lengths. And this all depends on your equipment. So it uses all of our own equipment specifications to create these prescription maps. So the next thing we want to do is our trial inputs. We can choose our A/B line that we want to use for that specific field, the design type, which could be a checkerboard or it can be a strip trial. We can do the input. In this one, it's a seeding rate, but also could be a nitrogen rate, a fertility rate, a product with and without pivot bio. We can be using an applicator such as a tarrigator or a planter to apply this. We can tell it how wide our machine is, whether it's 30 feet or 50 feet or 20 feet. We can tell it how many sections it has, if it has section control. We can tell it the plot width based on the different machines that we have of how wide we want that plot for that treatment. And we can tell it the units. We're looking at pounds per acre for fertilizer, seeds per 1,000 for seeding rate, or gallons per acre for other products that we may be looking at. We can tell it this is our typical rate that we want to look around. And then we can say, I don't want you to go lower than this for a minimum rate, and I don't want you to go higher than this for a maximum rate when you create these prescription trials for me. And I want maybe just a low, medium, high, so 3 levels, or in this case, we're looking at 6 levels. Once we've done that, we can go over here and click check, and we can create a trial. And once we've done that, we can scroll down and we can look at the picture of it. We can download the files we need. So we can look at a picture, we can see what that trial looks like and the different seeding rates on our farm. We can then download the prescription, other files that we need to be able to create the specific prescription for our monitor. And once we have that, it'll even kick us out a report. So that report will tell us about our trial, help us look at it. It's going to tell us our target rate, how many replicates for each of those different rates we want to look at. The important part here is going to give us our A/B lines, both for A/B line for our seeder or a planter or an applicator, and then the A/B line for the harvester to make sure we harvest in the areas where we apply the treatments to get the best data possible for that. And it's even going to give us pictures of what those A/B lines look for the planter or applicator, and then for the harvest versus the planter. In this case, they matched up, but in other cases, they may not. At this point, we can then be able to go and we'll be able to take the raw yield data and we'll be able to input it into here as well as the as applied data and be able to input it there and then process that data to get back a report. And that report has many different ones, but the one we're going to focus on is this grower report. So in this grower report, it's going to first of all give us information about the trial. It's going to say this is your plot size, the plot width, the acres of your field, these are your targeted rates. These are the prices that we use to do the analysis for the yield as well as the profitability. The next thing it's going to show is going to say, these are your targeted rates. These are your as applied rates. Sometimes they might be a little bit different, but we can still analyze using the as applied rates. These are our yields for each of those treatments as well as our profit. And then it can tell us if we change this to an optimal uniform rate from what we were doing, which was 40 to 48, we'd gain $32 per acre. If we use variable rate across that field, we'd still gain $32 per acre, so no change. So using just a uniform application strategy for this one was okay to do, but it may be different for your field and your trial. Here we also get an overall where we can see the different treatments that we applied and we can see the increase in bushels per acre as well as the profitability. But not only do we get this for overall across the field, but we wanted zones, we wanted areas within a field. So here we can see different areas. And these are elevations, but it could be zone results, it could be soil testing results or other things like that. And for each one of these areas, we get a yield and a profit result. So we can see, do the yields and profits change as we go through different, in this case, elevation in the field, or maybe different zones in the field? And does that lead to me knowing if I need to manage that field differently? We can do all of this on the DIFM website for all of our farm and our research trials, as well as process that data and help us get back the information we need to make good decisions. And that'll help us be able to take this field where we have variability, but we're not sure what to do with it, get that overall change, and then we can see within that field how those things may change and then help us make good decisions going forward.
The main thing I want to say is that we're looking for cooperators. We're looking for farmers and crop consultants who work with farmers who want to do these things. Setab and Julian Wilkerson, who's here, will show you that her group did some of this and they have some very interesting results. Okay. There's no catch. I mean, we're not asking for money. We want people to use this. So if you're interested, come talk to me. If we don't speak the same language, then we can wave our hands and you can give me a business card and we'll figure it out. We have a lot of people who speak a lot of languages in the project, so I think we'd be okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. C'est la période.
I always think I'm better looking. Then I don't know what that says about me. Too much confidence, or I don't know. Anyway.
Merci beaucoup. C'est la période de questions.
Hello, I really enjoy your presentation. I have a question for you about the video that we saw when the reaction between the time that the satellite said, or the data said, okay, you have to change your rate of seeding, and the seeder do the job. When is the harvest time to do you analyze data, whether it is a space between, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Okay, the buffer, yeah.
Yeah, there's got to be buffer zones because these machines don't just boom, boom. It takes them time to adjust. All right. So often when it depends on whether it's a planter, it depends on the input. Some of these variable rate applicators are much more accurate than others over space. yield monitors are imperfect, and it takes them time so that they can adjust and get good numbers out. What our data processing thing does is it looks for those, and it has mathematical ways to figure out where this ain't right. And it makes its own buffer zones.
Okay, so it's
So
kind of
we're not
automatic.
doing that. When we began, we're kind of thinking this doesn't look good, and we take the data out, kind of by hand. But we have algorithms that do that. Yes.
It is kind of easy to process that, or it's kind of automatic?
Oh, no, it wasn't easy. We had somebody write a dissertation chapter on that. Yeah, but I'm really proud of what she did. I think it's really good stuff.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for this interesting presentation. You pointed out at the beginning of this presentation that the goal of this work is to get the production function, relating inputs and outputs. But you presented is kind of weather-dependent or site-dependent curves. So are you planning, or are you aware of people working to bring all these data together and build an agronomic model?
Yes.
Where we have all sources of variability embedded in the model, and we can come with realistic curves?
Yes. The answer is yes. I mean, there's ongoing research. You can think of two uses. One is to use the data on the fields where it's generated. But it may be that you want to help some people that don't have the fancy machinery. They might be in Africa, right? The thing is, Africa and Brazil used to be one continent, and so in certain places they have very similar soils. And there are places in Brazil that have huge farms that could do this kind of work and learn about, put the data together and try to learn about how these soils work, and then you could maybe apply that to help other people in Africa who can't afford all the big machinery, et cetera, help grow crops there. So the answer is yes, but like I said, I hope my students are doing this 30 years from now and using this data to begin answering those questions. Okay, none of these questions are easy. I hope that answers, yeah. So yeah, yes.
Est-ce que tu as une question? Oui. Ah, c'est une vraie question. Ah, je pensais que c'était une question.
Good morning, David. Vincent Maccabee from Minotag. Thank you again for your presentation. David, two questions. First, your prescription algorithm, can it use multi-year dryer plot to create a better prescription? That's my first question.
No, not yet, but it's definitely on the radar screen.
Okay,
yes.
you. Second question, what happened with the farmer data? Can everybody have access to everybody else's data on the website, or everybody owns
No,
data?
it's all password protected. The farmer, I mean, obviously I can get to the data. Somebody, or more important, the people who know how the database works can get to the data. But it's password protected. If the farmer wants to give, say, a crop consultant access to the data, his data, he can do that. That's possible. But it's, no, in general, the world does not have access to the farmer's data.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, thank you very much again for coming in.
On va prendre une question en ligne.
Yes, someone's asking if you can do the same simulation with manure.
Do the simulation with what?
What you were doing in the website at the end, I think.
Can I do the...
Using manure instead of...
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Anything that you can apply variably, where you can hook a machine up to a satellite and it can know where it is on Earth and put different rates down in different places. And then if you have a crop where the yield can be monitored, then you can do this. And yes, we do manure trials.
Another question, is it compatible with every machines? I think it referred to the seed rate differential.
anything that the precision ag technology industry has, they all take what are called shape files. Okay, that's sort of a universal standard. So yeah, any kind of equipment from lots and lots of dealers and companies and stuff, this works with that.